As we get started with today's workshop, Grow Your Impact by Churches by Daniels, I'm excited for the information that's going to be shared. You can take a look online and read the bio. Churches by Daniel has a rich history and really quite a story to tell, but they're also a wealth of knowledge as I've talked with them over the years myself. So I'm looking forward to what you guys have to share. Joel, you can take it away.
Okay. Chad, were you able to jump on? Chad was on the other.
Hey, Joel, I'm going to run and help Chad. He'll be right with you guys.
I think he's getting on. Chad, you're muted. Can you unmute there?
Okay, James, you here?
You're still
Yes.
muted, buddy.
Looks like everybody's
There we go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we're all here. Can you guys see I shared a PowerPoint? Is that popping up?
Yes, we're seeing that.
Okay, lovely. Well, Chad, I think you were going to do a little introduction here, and then we would get rolling.
Sorry for the delay. I see we've got Sheila Bennett. Remember Sheila? Sheila, good to have you on with us. James Kruger and 9 others that I can't see your name. So we're glad to be back again at 2020 TCN. Although we prefer to be on the beach. We're glad to be on here live today. Just wanted to give a shout out to Phil and the leadership. I was thinking last night about, I think there's over 500 folks registered for this conference. It says a lot about TCN. It says a lot about the members. So we appreciate being with you. Again, my name's Chad Vanderripe. I'm in business development. I've been on the team here for about 8 years. With me is Joel Carr. He's actually the director of business development, pre-construction as well. And then Elena Butler from our marketing department is on the call with us as well.
Hi, everybody.
So we're going to be talking about growing your impact in today's session. And we're probably not going to go an hour and 15 minutes. We do want to have some time for questions at the end. As we're going through the course today, if you would like to send a question via chat or raise your hand, Elena will be documenting those questions and either interrupting us or we'll address those later at some point in the presentation. So, Joel, why don't you jump in and share what's on your heart?
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to start off and start with prayer, as all good Christians should. But no, let's pray real quick. Lord Jesus, we just come to you. We thank you for just everyone here. We thank you for the church network, for just all of us that you put us in ministry and the ability to serve your people, God, serve the people that you love. We thank you that as we're dealing with the crazy times right now, that you give us just grace. You give us strength. You give us wisdom on how to handle all the different circumstances we're facing. And I thank you that ultimately, as everyone in this class is looking at growth opportunities, looking at the future, I thank you that you give them wisdom, that you bless their endeavors, and that you just help them make the right decisions and the right doors open for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. We just, this class we put together. I think this is what the third year we've kind of done a class similar to this, and the outline of this is going to be a lot of back and forth. So as you guys have comments, feel free to interrupt us, write in something. But a lot of it's we're going through basically 6, I think it's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So five subject lines, kind of growing your space, when to grow your physical building, growing with the current times, incremental growth, how to prepare for your church expansion or building expansion, and then growing your children and youth spaces in the ministry. So all those are different areas. We're going to Chad and I are going to go back and forth and Elena with different questions, different things we've seen. So like I said, we're very informal. So feel free to interrupt us as you guys need to, is where you get into questions or if something comes up and pops in your head, interrupt us with that. Chad, I think you we're going to talk about just a little bit about growth and impact and what that means.
Yeah, just to kind of, excuse me, set the tone for what we're talking about. I looked up both the words growth and impact. And really, when we're talking about impact, we're talking about influence. And so obviously as leaders, as churches, as the body of Christ, we want to have as much influence as we can. We want to be influencing our own members, we want to be influencing the outside world. And I looked up in the dictionary the definition of grow. Simple word, obviously, get taller, get larger, increase in size, increase in weight. But I like these terms specifically: large, extend, and expand. So those are all descriptive terms of growth. And again, when we're talking about impact, we're talking about those specific areas: enlarging our influence, extending and expanding our influence. And so I guess we'll just jump in, Joel, to our first topic of growing your space. How do you know it's time to build a bigger facility or expand? I guess that's the first question, right?
Yeah.
How do you know it's time?
Yeah. Well, before we do that, Chad, I think I was going to play a little short video.
Oh, I forgot about the video. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Chad's jumping the gun here, guys. Tell
Yep.
you what. No, we're going to play a quick video. And basically, this video is just with Charlie, our owner. And it's a little bit about why he started the company and what's on his heart. And so it puts it in a good place to start out. So let me get that queued up, and hopefully it runs. Let's see here. Let me know if it works.
I think it's going. I can't hear any volume, Joel.
You don't hear any volume?
That's okay.
We don't have any sound, Joel.
Okay, let me do this.
You needed to do the setting.
Yep.
Hey everybody, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for your patience as we figure this out. We're new to the virtual conference sphere, just like you guys are. It's kind of an adventure.
It is.
Definitely very different. I'm James. I'm your host. So if you've got any technical questions or issues, I can help the best I can.
Yeah, sorry, that PowerPoint is when I tried to bring it back up, it shut down. So it's pulling back up. But why it's pulling back up, I just will share real quick. One reason, you have lots of different opportunities when you're talking about growing your church or growing your impact, right? As a church, there's lots of different avenues that you need to address when you're doing that. One would be social media. So like if you guys aren't on social media, then your church should be. It's a major ground that is reaching the multitudes, especially with the current circumstances going on. So that would be one major impact. Another would be community outreach. I know Chad and I have really noticed in talking to a lot of churches over the last several months, the churches that are very community involved are doing very well right now, just because they have a very broad community base. So that sets them apart. So definitely community impact, social media, and then of course the last, which is kind of what this class is around, which has ties to your building, growing your impact with your building. And the way I like to describe that is you have a flock of sheep and they come back to the trough to eat their food, right? So if your trough is very ugly and your trough looks terrible or that has nothing in it to eat, then your flock is going to go hungry, or they're going to go to other troughs, or they're not going to go to a trough at all and they might perish. That sounds terrible. But anyways, the point is that we tie our building similar to that trough. So you want to make sure that you take care of that trough so your flock is taken care of, because a flock can't reach other goats to turn them to sheep unless they're taken care of back at the trough. So that's kind of one reason why growing your impact through your building is important. It's important to keep your building in a state that can advance your vision and not hinder your vision. Okay, I think I have this PowerPoint back up. Let me see here. Come on, there it is. Okay. Okay, let me know if this kicks. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, it's about to start playing.
Got it.
Dad, your dad was a pastor and a builder. Can you share a little bit about your story and how you got into church building?
Yes, my dad was a pastor. He was a Assembly of God pastor, and one of the stories I love was that at 76 years old, he pioneered his last church. So my dad was more of a pioneer. He would go start a church or pastor small churches. Did a very good job. Him and my mom loved people, loved what they did. One of the last things he said to me was, before he died, he said, "I'd love to do it again. I'd love to preach another sermon." So I come from that background of being around the church. Then I started really young. I started building. My dad would be building the church, so he would make me and my brother help.
He put you to work, didn't he?
Yes, and my sisters sometimes. So we would be working, and I was learning. I was learning how to build. And then at a really early age, I built my first home when I was 18, and I sold the home, and we made a good profit. My wife and I, we were young, and I decided I was going to be a builder. And I would love to say that all the projects turned out as well as that. They didn't. I didn't always make that kind of money, but I found my niche, and I started building on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Loved what I did, and at age, I think about 31, I attended Bible school at Rhema, dedicated my life to Christ, and we decided we would work there and build their church. The Hagans asked me to. It was a great relationship. The church there was 5,000 seats, 250,000 square feet. So it was a great experience. And in doing that, a lot of other people heard about the church I built, and that got me started building other churches and helping other churches.
Okay. So that was just a little bit about Charlie. He started this as is kind of more ministry. Is he just saw so many churches that needed the help, and they didn't know where to start. They didn't know what to do. So he started when he was still at Rhema building that. He had pastors call him and say, "I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do, and I need to do this." And so he would go out and wouldn't charge anything, meet with them, and that's just how that was ingrained in him. So he's ingrained that in all of his staff. So we often tell people that call us, "Hey, we'll come see your building. We'll come walk it. We'll do whatever to try to, if we can help in any way before there's even anything in it for us. We're all about that. We're here to see the ministry move forward." So anyways, enough on that. We'll get back into growing your impact. And Chad, I think you can now start back to the first kind of point that you were hot on about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, sorry about that. So wanted to make the statement too that for those who are listening now and then in the future, a lot of what we're going to be sharing is maybe really elementary, basic information. Hopefully there's some nuggets that we can send your way today. But we appreciate you being here. And so we'll go ahead and get started with our first point. And I'm just going to read a statement here on our outline. When your vision is bigger than your building allows, it slows your momentum. And obviously, as churches, we want to keep our momentum going. That leads us to the question, where to start? And when your facilities do not support and limit your vision, when your facilities do not support or limit your vision from being executed. And we want our visions to be executed. So, Joe, we were going to talk about just some simple steps.
Yeah.
You want to jump into those?
Yeah. So basically, there's kind of 3 subpoints when you're looking at, okay, what do we do here? We know that our building is either outdated, We know that we're too tight. We don't have enough room. We need to expand. Where do we start? What do we do? So there's kind of 3 things that we outline that you should do, and then we'll kind of cover a little bit of each one. But it's be ready, be prepared. So that's financially, physically, and mentally. Think critically, and then proper internal evaluation. So back to be ready, be prepared. What's that mean? You say financially, physically, mentally. What's that mean? Well, oftentimes any project you step out on is going to have a financial impact. So you want to go ahead and start thinking through things. So, have you ever gotten a loan before? Have you done a capital campaign? Does your church even want to do a loan, or do you just want to raise funds for a project? All those kind of things you need to start going around your head thinking of how you want to do it. Physically, it's going to physically affect your current building or what you're doing. Are you going to be displaced? Can you be displaced? Physically, it's going to have to take a team. You're going to have to put a team of people together around the church to help with getting through the process. Who's going to be the point person? Those kind of things. Mentally, statistically, Chad, you might have to help me with this one. I don't know, I want to get it right, but statistically, I think pastors that go through a building program, there's like a crazy high percentage. Do you remember what that is, Chad?
It was Tom Rainier. A lot of these guys are probably familiar with the quote. Tom Rainier had a statistic that I think 8 out of 10 pastors either leave the ministry or take another church after going through a building project. So there can just be a tremendous toll. Several of you on the call have probably experienced that and have wisdom in those areas. But yeah, that was the quote from Tom Rainier, Joel.
Yeah. So mentally, it's going to affect whoever. And the whole point to all that is to say, sometimes you need to reach out and get more information, and whether that's us or other people, do that. Get a consultant if you need to. The last thing you want is a crazy amount of pressure thrown on one person, the pastor or one person in the church, and they can't handle it. So,
the right consultant too, I'll just jump in there, Joel, should be willing to come and do an evaluation, sit down with your team, and not charge you thousands of dollars. We do that. Sometimes we collect some travel expenses. Other times we just do it on our own dime. But the goal there is, if you hire the right consultant, you're partnering with someone that's got a lot of experience. It's been in potentially hundreds of churches. Mm-hmm. And so while your team may have a good idea of the path that they want to take, or they may not have a good idea, I think it's always wisdom to, before you get too far down into the project, to really bring someone in to offer their advice, their instruction, their wisdom on the project. It could save you a lot of heartache and pain, especially if you've got a backup, turn around and start over, table the project for 3 years. Joel and I can tell you story after story about situations exactly like that. So again,
right. So to sum up, Chad, kind of what you're saying is it's so important to have the right partner so that the pastor can focus on leading the church and not worry about leading his building project as well during this really difficult time. Correct?
That would be definitely another thought for sure. Is although a pastor's always needs to lead a building project, he needs to lead it, but he doesn't need to manage it. And so that's when you get a partner come in and manage it for you. Yep, good thought, Elena. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. Second kind of thing there is a proper internal evaluation. So we kind of talked about that. Some of that, part of that's hiring a consultant. Some of that maybe not. Maybe that's putting a team together in the church and evaluating your current circumstances. Is a kid's wing exploding and you don't have proper room and you need to maybe do a renovation on a different part and expand that wing without necessarily having to build a bigger footprint of your building. Is there other opportunities? We always like to say, as much as you can, use space that can be utilized for different things, because then you're not wasting a bunch of money building a classroom that's used once a week. So, there's different things you want to do, but a proper evaluation, internal evaluation, looking through that before you just jump off into something would be wise. And then I think the last thing we kind of talked about is thinking critically. Are there other options you could do? For instance, maybe you move to 3 services instead of 2, or maybe, there are other options before jumping into an expensive building project. As much as we'd love to get all the phone calls and do all the building projects for churches everywhere in the U.S., the last thing we want is churches to step off into something that would be unwise and would cause problems later for them. So you really want to think critically through every step. Chad, did you have something to add to that?
I would just add that, the right consultant too won't be pushing you in a direction that you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I like something that our architects say in the meetings that we're in. They say, we're designing your space. We're not designing something that's going to be a monument or a trophy to ourselves. We're designing your space. So the right consultant's not going to come in and take over, but he will hopefully offer transparent and good advice to either confirm or add more light to what you're already thinking.
Yeah.
Last topic here, Joel, the last bullet point rather, we'll want to hit on is aligning your vision.
Mm-hmm.
You had some good thoughts about that, matching your vision across the board.
Yeah, you just want to make sure. I'm sure all of you guys have walked through houses where like one room's this, and then you walk to another room and it's that, and then you walk to another room and it's some Disney show, and then so it's crazy, right? And then nothing seems to go together, and what it does is it leaves you kind of a little scattered. And I'm sure you walk into lots of buildings, and if you walk in and you don't know where to go, you can't find your way, you don't know which direction to go, then you just you kind of stay uneasy. So when we go through and program buildings on our architectural side, the same thing. Our biggest concern is making sure that everything flows, it goes together, and it stands behind what the vision of your ministry is. And so any decision you make as a ministry, it needs to be aligned with your vision. So if it could be a great thing, you want to build a big community outreach center. Well, is that aligned with your vision? It could be a great thing, but if it's not aligned with your vision, maybe it's not the right thing for you guys. Because we believe if it's aligned with your vision, then the vision came from God. So that means we need to follow that through. So that's kind of the last biggest area to me. It's really important is making sure whatever you're venturing down, that it aligns with your vision, and that your vision's aligned with what God's given the church to do. So,
well, would you also say that that's kind of one of the really key, honestly, benefits and assets of having someone that's actually a design build construction firm, because you could design absolutely for the way they do church and then build it with the same vision from start to finish rather than trying to piecemeal it?
For sure. But I think to that point, yeah, you'd want to always. I mean, we have churches that are only going to do. There's a church right now in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. They're only doing a small youth renovation, but they want us to go ahead and choose finishes for their entire facility to make sure everything aligns and goes together, which we always encourage. But I would dig a little deeper. I would say that this isn't just about your building. This is about what the core value of your ministry is, and if this project even aligns with that. I think it's really important that when you step off, anytime you step off on a big purchase, I know my wife and I in our household, anytime we step off in any big purchase or anything, I dig deep. I pray extra. I say, Lord, is this what we're supposed to do? Does this align with my family vision? So I would say, yes, for the building, for sure, get through that, but also for the ministry, because we've seen over the years of doing this, we've seen some jobs go fantastic, and we've seen some go great. And I would venture to say some of the ones that have not gone great, you could almost tie back to they got away from their vision. So, that's yeah. Is there, before we move on to the next topic point, are there any questions so far? You guys are just all happy and great. So
Just remember, guys, you can type in comments into the meeting chat on the side if you like, and I'll definitely be monitoring those. And you can also raise your hand and feel free to just jump in and ask questions anytime. We'll also have a Q&A at the end, so don't worry, we will get to your questions. We love questions.
okay, growing with times. Chad, you were going to jump in on this one.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all have seen the video. I wanted to have it on our presentation today. We just didn't get it to Elena quick enough. But I don't know if y'all have seen this video on Facebook yet. It's a computer generated bus that does a U-turn. And this bus is going down like a single lane mountain road in the Philippines. And he's got to turn that thing completely around. He goes takes the front end off half the cliff, stays on the road, backs up, goes back and forth 4 or 5 times. And the caption under that was, this is what ministry looks like now during the pandemic. And so, obviously, very, very challenging times. Kudos to all of you for staying the course. And I know y'all been working really hard. The folks that we're engaged with, they're working, instead of 40 hours a week, some of them are working 80, 100-hour weeks. So I know y'all been working hard through this. It's a unique time, but with unique times comes opportunities. And so, we're going to talk about growing with the times. And Joel talked a little bit earlier about your digital presence. And while you don't have to be a church that's got 5 campuses and has money to spend on the grandest equipment, you could still do something. And I think, like Bill mentioned again at the start, getting your social media going, getting church online going. We've got some partners that can help with that we can connect you with if you've not been able to work out some of the tweaks. There's a great company called Yellow Box. I highly recommend. But Joe, you go ahead and jump in, bud. Talk about ABL.
Yeah, so you're kind of hitting on some of it, but yeah, you see a broad range, right? The church is, just speaking of since the pandemic and everything and how it's affected us, the partners that we have that we've seen so far brave it the best financially have been very plugged in on social media, and their online giving was already in place and they were plugged in well in that. The churches that took a harder hit were the ones that didn't have any online giving set up. They weren't online at all. And so they had a lot of catching up to do at the beginning of this. They were doing Facebook Live videos for their services. And some of them since have now got full camera packages or they've caught up a lot, and they had to get on Yellow Box. I think it's a Yellow Book, Chad?
Yellow Box.
Yellow Box, yeah. It's a similar program, but it's an online giving tool. There are lots similar to that. That's just a partner that we've worked with in the past. But companies or churches that already had that set up have done much better, is what we've seen. So
community outreach, jumping in here, Joel.
Yeah.
Yep. Appreciate y'all being patient with us going back and forth. We're in separate offices, so we're trying not to talk over one another. But community outreach, obviously in these times, can be challenging. What you can do, what you can't do. I'm thinking of a larger ministry here in Tulsa that if you're giving away food items, things like that, you can get a pass and you're able to engage the community. So you just have to search it out based on your area, your town, what you can and what you can't do. But again, the point of growing your influence, growing your impact.
Well, and sorry, Chad, I was going to say, I think it goes back also to wherever you're at in that scale of we hardly have any social media presence to, we have 20 people on staff that do social media. You can start somewhere. So I'm sure the people with 20 could probably do a better job. And if you don't have any, you can still start. And it's really simple. So I would encourage everyone, no matter where you're at, that would be a good starting point to get rolling on that. And then also, we've had probably 3 or 4 churches called since the beginning of the pandemic asking about AVL partners. Hey, who do you guys work with? Who do you use? We're needing to get our cameras reset up, etc. So,
Hello.
Hello there.
Good morning.
Hey, this is Pastor Murphy.
Yeah. Pastor Murphy. I so appreciate this.
Pastor Murphy, if you could mute your phone, that would be great.
Sure.
My name is Michelle
Mute
Murphy. And you know my son well. This is your first time.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Let me see if I can mute him. There he goes. Okay, great.
Hey, we might have left that going, Joe. We could have got some good things on that call.
Yeah, we could have listened to it and then broke down his call afterwards. No, anyways. So if any of you guys do need any, we work with probably 3 pretty regularly AVL companies that we highly recommend, and they're on a scale of really big to smaller. So if any of you guys do need any AVL support or any of that, don't hesitate to call us or reach out on that. And Chad, you talked about community. That's another, some of the bigger churches or even smaller churches I've seen do really well are very community minded. And so it's harder, of course, with what's going on to get out in the community because you're around people, and they're saying we shouldn't be around a lot of people right now. But you mask up, you follow guidelines, and volunteer help. There's a lot of churches that are doing online stuff, helping at local food banks, other stuff like that. But I've noticed that churches that push that a lot are staying very strong as well. Chad, would you see the same thing?
Yeah, yep, for sure. Yeah, whether it's during the pandemic or not during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Churches that engage the community, although that's got to align with your vision. I mean, there's churches that are focused more on, different things. We could talk about, multiple different topics, but if you're interested in growing your impact and your influence, then definitely community outreach is a way to make that happen.
Right.
It looks like Sarah is saying that at their church, they did a mask and hand sanitizer giveaway and also a pizza giveaway. So that's awesome, Sarah. That sounds like a great community outreach. Excellent example of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And then also growing with the times outside of the pandemic. So if you rewind 3 or 4 months ago, so what did that look like for a church as far as, what kind of online presence should we have? Do we need to have all the big LED walls and all the fancy stage lighting? Do we need to turn the lights off during worship or leave them on? What should we do? These are the arguments, and I shouldn't say arguments, the discussions that a lot of churches go through. And so, a lot of that, we kind of, as we always say, when we walk in the door to help a church in their design and with what they're needing with stage design and all that, we have a lot of experience. We've done it a lot. We keep up with the times, so we know what is, you would say, in right now, but we know what is current. But that's different for every church. Are you a more traditional church? Are you non-denominational? And you're Stephen Furtick. Who are you? And what's your, again, it goes back to your vision. So we always say, we're going to tie back to your vision, and this is your church. So we want to make sure we're doing what fits with your church. However, we usually encourage, just because current times call for online presence, social media. So we always encourage to at least put structure and things in place so you can add stuff later on.
Jump in here. A good example is actually right up on the screen right now of a project. Although we did it 7 years ago, it's a great example of growing with the times. So this is Asbury United Methodist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're probably a 15 to 20,000 member church, I would think. Very traditional church. And about 5 years ago, we partnered with them. What was occurring in this church is they had bought a venue off-site. I say off-site, it was about a quarter mile from where the main building was. And they made it a venue for young adults. And while it was growing and doing amazing, what ended up occurring is the church brought in a consultant and they said, listen, if you don't do something to get this group back into the sanctuary at some point, after they have a family, they're out of here. They're not coming back. And so what we did with Asbury is we came in and we basically did some millwork on the stage and put in an environmental projection so that in about a 15-minute window, they could change the look and feel of that sanctuary from a completely traditional church to a more contemporary venue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really helped them continue to grow. And so, get a great example of growing with the times.
Yes.
Current culture now has affected the way that we do church. It's just a reality. And while no one wants to compromise their doctrine, they don't want to compromise things that are important to them. Someone's hovering over the stained glass element. Yeah, the stained glass. Go ahead, bro.
I was just going to say that. So that stained glass in the picture, that's actually environmental projection. That's just a normal wall.
So, and with this project, because they're a United Methodist Church and they're a little more traditional, the elders really struggled with bringing that AVL in. So this was their way of, and actually it's kind of a cool story that they started by just projecting that stained glass on the wall. And these are actually, I think, if I remember right, the stained glass icons from their previous building that they just brought into the computer. Right. And so it felt like their home church to them. It felt like the place where all of their traditions and their legacy lived.
Yeah, it was a cool opportunity. It was really good.
Well, Joe, we better jump into.
Yeah, let's jump into
5. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's jump into incremental growth. Any questions so far, guys? We're going to move on. If not, okay. So incremental growth. So everyone's like, okay, great. I don't have $2 million to do a big building project, but we do need to freshen up, or we do need to make some changes. I understand that it's time for that. So what can we do? Where do we start? So that's a good question. So you don't have to start big. And Chad, why don't you share just real quick a short version of Joel Sims' story? You don't have to give the long version, just give the short version of what they did.
Okay. Charlie's better telling that story, Joel. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I can tell it. I was going to give you some FaceTime there. So basically, Joel Sims, his church, he took it over for his dad, and he was a pretty young man, took it over, and he took it from about a 500-person church down to I think a 20-person church. And he said, yeah, I about killed it. And so he was trying to decide, what should we do? They had this old building. He felt really bad. He's a young man with a young family. His dad had passed away, and he took the church over, and it was struggling. So they came together with his youth pastor at the time and said, you know what? The building, it has like a fountain out front that hasn't been full of water in 10 years. There's weeds all over the outside. Like, it looks terrible. Like, no one wants to come here. And so they said, let's start getting some excitement just by doing little things. Let's put water in the fountain. Let's reseal it and put water in the fountain. So that's the first thing they did, is they put water in the fountain. And he said, instead of people coming to church that next Sunday, kind of a little just normal, there wasn't a lot of excitement. They saw it and they're like, oh, look, change. We're seeing some different things. And so what that did is it spurred on them going room by room and painting rooms, doing some different things until now they were doing lots of other stuff as well. But this helped spur on some excitement, and it helped him start the engines and start chugging. So similar, it doesn't take a lot to show people that, hey, there's growth here. There's new things happening here. We aren't. Yep. Yeah, there's life. We're not the old church that doesn't care about you, that is, hasn't been taken care of. We care about you. We want to help you. So little things is is getting 5 people together on a Saturday and just weeding the flower beds, spiffing up little outside things. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, there
Chad, you
could
were gonna say something?
Yeah, there could be literally 100 things that need to be done, and you're probably aware of all those things. So, the thought there would be to prioritize what's going to have the greatest impact. Development, great thing. Can every time you're executing on something that may be very small or seemingly insignificant, you're gaining trust on the inside and on the outside. And what I mean by that is you're gaining trust with your people, and you're presenting yourself to those who are outside your 4 walls that haven't entered in them yet. Maybe now they will enter, because they can tell, hey, something's happening here. I'm thinking about, I may be jumping ahead, but I was asked to come and do some consulting with a church in Houston. It was, they were running about 4 services at the time, and they were considering building, and basically just wanted me to come and meet with the team and share what I saw. Won't go into all of that, but one of the unique things that they did that was really, really neat is they took their coffee shop and their lobby and their bookstore, or their shop, they brought that all outdoors into the parking lot. There was trees there, and there was cover, and a lot of effort there on setup and tear down. But what my observation on that was, every single car that drove by was impacted. It's like, whether they were, antichrist or whatever, didn't have any desire to know God at all. They're like, and there's something happening. There's life demonstrated outside. So
Yeah,
doing those small things. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, as I say, you can start somewhere. You do something to show life. Also, on this small little steps, like Chad said, you gain that trust equity, which helps in the bigger projects. When you present them to the church, it helps them. They've seen the smaller ones go well, so they're like, okay, we can step up to the bigger ones because we've seen these small ones go well. With that, I'll carry along the same example. Pastor Joel Sim, when they were ready to do a big project, they did it in phases because they couldn't afford, a $20 million project all at once because they were building a totally new campus. So we phased it. So that's probably, Chad, I would say 60 to 70% of the facilities we do now have to be phased because it's just a lot of money. New buildings cost a lot of money. And
not to get off on a tangent on that, but if you should always be thinking about not just the project that you're doing right now, but what's on the other side of that. So the right design team will be thinking about. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
The right design team will be thinking about what's going to occur. Sure, we're doing right now. We want to make sure heat or make future projects possible.
Right. So
hearing all that impact or all that feedback?
No, I think it's just on your side.
Okay.
So as you're going and you're thinking through this, kind of tying back to the first 2 points as well, if you're thinking through a building project, you want to make sure you might get overwhelmed thinking, well, what we need is going to cost way too much. And that might be the case, but it might not, because oftentimes we can scale it back. We can do phases, and phases also help build trust equity, because what happens, instead of jumping off into that $10 million job, well, you're just jumping off into a $2 or $3 million job, and you're able to get that done a lot more feasibly and equitably. And the church sees that, so they're willing to continue giving, donating to the project. So we see phasing really work to get to the end goal, the end vision, quite often. So make sure that should be a big part kind of in incremental growth.
Let's jump into how to prepare for expansion.
Yeah.
That's our next
So,
one.
Yeah. So you decide you're going to do a project, whatever it be, a renovation, a new build, an addition, whatever it is. Where do you start? So there's lots of options, right? You have architects, you have construction managers, you have general contractors, and I'm sure you have about 4 or 5 friends that are one of these that you'll go to and ask. So everyone knows where to start. So I always say, start by utilizing the people you know that are knowledgeable. So build a team around you. Put that team around you that can help you through the process. And I would include people on your team, such as construction experts, engineers, architects, even if it's a home builder, people that are knowledgeable about the building process, the design process, anyone around those kind of spheres are good to have on your team. And then start making selections on how you want to go to the table as far as a project. So most people are going to reach out to an architect first because that's what makes most sense. You need to get a building design, you need a renovation. Let's reach out to a couple architects. Let's see what they say. Let's get a price, which that makes sense. The downside to sometimes not doing that correctly can be bad. And I'll explain that. If you reach out to an architect and you don't have anyone on your team, or you don't have a partner or consultant that knows construction cost well, then your architect's going to design a building based on the vision you give him. If he's not tying that vision back to a budget and he doesn't know the construction cost really well because he's not building every day, he's designing, then what happens is oftentimes you get a wonderful set of documents. You get a beautiful renderings and they look fantastic, but you go to get them bid and you're $2 million over and you can't afford it. And so then you just spent, lots of money on drawings on an idea that's a paperweight in the back of your office. And so that's what I don't know what's going on here. Someone's dinging the system here. Anyways, that's the problem that we see often, and we have a lot of churches that come to us like, yeah, we've done this 3 times. Yep. We have rolled set of drawings over there in the corner, and we spent all this money, we can't build it. So how do you get around that? What do you do? What do you do to safeguard yourself from that? And this is one of the main reasons Charlie started a design build firm, is because he was tired of having churches come to him and say, hey, we paid for these drawings, can we use them? And he's like, man, you could, but this is going to cost you a ton of money. And so we started design build because there's 2 options in you design. You can design to a budget, or you can budget to a design. So we always want to start with a budget, and then we're going to design to that budget. And so one of the first things we do in our front end piece is we come and we go over program. We come and meet with our whole team and we go over your vision and everything. And one of the questions in there is going to be like, how much money do you guys think this should cost? How much do you have to spend? We can tell you what your vision is telling us and how much we think it will cost. And if you, if that busts your budget, then it's a problem. So you have to work through that. We are constantly in the design build process going back to your budget to make sure we don't design anything that will exceed that or max that out. So if you don't hire a design builder, how does that work? Because you didn't hire a design builder, you still want to have safeguards in place. So say you hire an architect. A way to safeguard you is hire an architect and then go find a construction partner, a project manager, but you want to have them both involved at the same time, because that construction partner needs to be involved reviewing drawings, looking to make sure that they're not we call it architecting, but they're not over architecting the drawings to where it's going to be really expensive. And there's lots of ways to save money and still get a look. For instance, you've all seen windows on commercial buildings. There are 2 different types of windows typically on commercial buildings. You have storefront windows, which is like the little windows on most storefronts and around, and those can go up to about 14 feet tall before they have to have engineered structural systems in them. Or you can do a curtain wall. A curtain wall can go 50, 60 feet high, but it has to have structural members within it. The cost difference between the two is about $45 for a square foot for a storefront and $145 for a curtain wall. Well, the way we get around that is we put a structural beam at about 15 feet between them, and we wrap it in sheet metal so it looks like a curtain wall window system, but it's at a fraction of the cost. So you get the same look. So there's lots of opportunities like that that we've uncovered through the years. That it's not rocket science. Other architects and construction people will do it too. But those are the kind of things you want to chase on the front end when you're doing a building project. And having construction and design partnered together will help you not come in way over budget in the end. So that's why we believe and utilize the design build method. We think it's the best because of that. You can get to the end goal with other means. We just think it's a little hard. So Chad, did you have anything to add to my spiel?
I would just say that, excuse me, generally budgets are tight, and generally there's more vision, hopes, dreams, desires than there are dollars available to execute on what you want to do. And so I just think, coupled with everything what Joel said, really having a proper evaluation on the front end to find out what your site costs are, what your infrastructure costs are, because there's a whole lot more
than good.
Just your design fees and your construction fees or the cost to build the building. There's utilities, and we've talked about this before in previous classes, but all of your infrastructure, there's two pieces of property that could be a mile apart, and your site costs or development costs, in other words, describing the same thing, could be 100,000, it could be 500,000 on a property literally a mile down the road. And so we really believe in counting the cost as early as possible and really delivering to our client, the church, the total project cost. So not just the cost of the building, we want to include the audio, video, and lighting, the seats, all the major expenses, everything on the site, including parking. So that when pastor starts to cast that vision and lead the church through the process, he doesn't ever have to back up and apologize and says, hey, I told you all it was 3 million, but gosh, it's 5.5 million. That's never a good position that I would want to be. I don't think any leader would want to be in that position either. So there's some safeguards, and it's tied into a process. And we'll talk about that more if someone has questions. But counting the cost would be the only thing I would add.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Chad. There's lots of different things that have to be done that go into a building project. Everything from permitting to site to the building. The building is only one cost. The site costs and everything else are more. So you want to make sure whatever consultants or whatever partners you bring to the table are accounting for all of those items within your budget. Most builders that don't build churches a lot are not going to put the proper AVL budget in the budget for a church because they don't do it that often. They don't know that AVL can cost a ton of money if you want it to. So you want to make sure that's properly budgeted because you don't want to bust at the end of the day. So that's in our process as we worked it out. We do a little front end piece that puts all of that in place. We do all the legwork on the site, everything else for a fraction of the cost before you go into full architectural drawings. We do that because we don't want to see churches spend a lot of money on something that is, might not ever come to fruition. Because we believe that's a waste of funds, which are given in the name of God. So we don't want to waste funds given in the name of God. So that's how we see it. Are there any questions before we move on? Chad, was there anything else within that? I think we didn't really talk a lot about fundraising or partners or banking. You want to hit on that real quick?
We could just touch on a couple things really quick.
Yeah.
Again, the lead title to this section is How to Prepare Your Church for Expansion. So again, saying some things you probably already know, but the first step is probably forming a team. So depending on your church government, your structure, that looks different for churches. But our advice on putting a team together is find folks that are knowledgeable, that have the right heart, and then limit your team to a certain number. I remember we did a project years ago, and I think there was 16 members on the building committee. And we started the project. The getting through the first process that takes timeline for a first process generally takes about 10 to 12 weeks, and it took over a year. And so the reason for that is because no one could come together in agreement. And so the more folks you have, obviously, the more eyes you have on it, there's value there. The challenge is it may take you a lot longer to get across the finish line. So start with forming a team. And then when it comes to fundraising, lots of different thoughts and ideologies on that. Some folks really believe in hiring a consultant. I think there's great value in having a partner come that shares your values, that you connect well in your heart to lead that charge. He's walked through that process a lot of times. If the pastor has to do it on his own, sometimes experienced pastors that have been through several projects, they can really do them with ease. If you've never done one before, do it on your own. Something else in ministry is going to give, leading the fundraising. And then the last thing, well, I think you covered that, Joel. So
yeah, I would say the other thing is before you delve off into a project, you kind of need to decide if you're going to, are you going to do a loan? Are you not? Is it just going to be pure fundraising? If you are going to do a loan, that process can be quite time consuming with a bank. So you want to get that started well in advance as well, before you kind of jump off into the deep end.
Especially with COVID right now, closings are taking a lot.
Right. So, and we have multiple partners we've worked with through the years. Again, feel free to reach out to us. We don't charge anything to talk and share our consultants and do any of that stuff. We're here to help serve the local church at large. So I think with that, Chad, we'll jump in, unless there are any questions, we'll jump into the last kind of subtopic.
Yep. Most of y'all know children's and youth spaces are high priority. When we're doing new builds and we're meeting with teams, we're always emphasizing kid spaces. It's if you want to grow your church, you want to grow young families, you've got to show that your kids, that your children are a priority. And so I'm thinking of an example here of a church. I could probably name the church's name, and many of you might know who it is. Great leadership, tremendous preaching and teaching. They're probably running, I would guess, 15 to 20,000, huge online presence. Unfortunately, they're really struggling in some of the retention, I believe, of young families because their children's and youth spaces are very, very poor. They've got the room, they bought a huge facility. They've just not been able to tackle that area. They're aware of that, but making that area a priority and getting that, doing something in that area that shows that you value kids is definitely going to be, and again, back to where we started before, even doing something small. And you could go to Hobby Lobby, different places like that, find some stuff at very low cost to show that you value children.
Yeah. One thing we've noticed probably in the last, 10, 15 years is with the millennials coming into church now, and I can talk about them because I am one, but on the older age bracket one. But anyways, I claim it when it makes sense. So anyways, with millennials coming in, they're very much a generation that, I hate to say it, but it's not necessarily use the term spoon feed your child, but they're very concerned with every aspect of their children's life. And that's why you see so many kids, all these different sporting events. There's so many different, lessons. And I mean, if you want to, you can have your kid in something every night of the week. I have friends that do. But with that, how does that relate to church? What are they looking for? What do they see? So what I've noticed is when I grew up, it was kind of, hey, the kids, throw them in the back 2 cinder block rooms of the church, give them some balls, and some teachers will teach them, and they'll be fine. And we were. I grew up just fine. But today, if you do that, your children's wings and your millennials, they won't stick around. They're going to go to the churches where they have some very good children's program that are going to teach their kids, that are going to have them doing different programs, different things. So what happens is you're seeing the churches that don't have a very lineal, directive children's program that's clear, that's easy to follow. You're seeing the younger generations not attracted to that church. So all that to say, it's important to make sure that your children's ministry is excellent and is aligned with the vision of your church at total. There's little things we always throw into children's wings. We always say, hey, as far as theming and stuff like that, don't worry about theming out all the classrooms a lot, but you want to give some spice to the entrances. You might want to have a play area that's nice, but as far as theming out each individual room, that's not as important. You can have some bright colors on the walls, you can have your tables, but as far as spending a bunch of money on that, we don't see the value, you getting as much value out of it. But for instance, in the picture on the walls, they themed very heavily just the hallway. You can see a play area on the right. It's bright, it's colorful. When you walked into this church, this is the assembly in West Monroe. But you walked into the church and you knew where to go by looking at the colors and by looking at what you saw. You didn't necessarily have to use wayfinding signs. And that's what is really important in theming in youth and kids areas. You shouldn't have to look at signs to know where to go. It should be pretty evident.
Joel, talk a little bit, just really quick, on what role you feel like how technology is playing more of a role, especially in children's and youth wings, and what the church is offering in those areas.
Yeah, for sure. So where we see a lot of technology in the children's and youth areas is mainly around security. You see the same technology. You have a little AV and stuff like that, but security is probably more important now than it ever has been, for good reason. But one thing in design, if you use someone else or if you use us, we're going to make sure you do it. But if you're using someone else, you always make sure you have secure entrance and points for your children's wing. You typically don't want multiple doors that you can get in. You can have egress, but you don't want multiple points of avenues to get into your children's wings, because parents don't feel safe dropping their kids off and leaving if that's the case. So typically we have check-in areas, and you have to, once you check in, there's lots of different options there. You have check-in booths, check-in counters. Almost everybody now has, different check-in options. There's a multitude of different programs and companies that offer check-in options, so I won't get into that. But you check in and then you drop your kid past the window, and that's the only way in and out other than emergency, and then you can egress. But the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is a lot of churches are doing a check-in, and then they're doing kind of an indoor play area. As you can see in this picture, there's one on the left there. It doesn't have to be something that nice. Sometimes they'll just have a big room with different toys and stuff in there. And so they'll check in, and the smaller kids will all go in there until class starts. And then the teachers will go get the kids from there in individual classes. And so that's a lot of kind of how we're seeing them operate now. As you see in this picture, you can see the different check-in counters. You see the pre-K area, you see the elementary area. So they would check in, and on Sundays, there'd be people at those doors monitoring. And so that's the way in and out of those areas. So that's how we're seeing a lot of as far as pre-K. Youth are a little not as security minded, but still, usually with youth, you just don't want dark back stairwells and hallways. You want big open lit areas for known reasons. But Elena, did that answer what you were asked after?
Yeah. Yes, that was perfect, Joel. Thank you so much.
Security.
10:15. I don't know, Elena, how much
Yeah,
time you got left?
Yeah. Yeah,
Probably
Phil
pretty
said that we
quick.
could go a little bit long, so you guys are doing great. Guys, do you have any questions for us? I think that about wraps up a lot of the things that we've talked about. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask? Again, you can always call our office. Our phone number is on our website, www.churchesbydaniels.com. Our phone number's on there. I'll answer the phone probably. You can talk to me, you can talk to Joel or Chad or Jennifer. She's not here right now, but we're all here to answer any questions you might think of later as well, or if you're not watching this in the live stream. Thank you so much, Elson. We appreciate that. You saying this has been great information. We just really want it to be so helpful and informative to people. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anybody have any questions? Maybe not even about something that we discussed, just in general. You know, Chad, I think we'll give people a chance to think. We get a lot of questions. I get a lot of phone calls with people just calling and saying, hey, I want to build a building. How much is it going to cost? So what's a short answer for you, for people being like, oh, if I want to do a building project, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah, it's a loaded question there.
How much do you want to spend? We can go in circles all day long. No. So just a decent rule of thumb, and I don't mind telling this because we tell people this all the time. But if you're looking at building a brand new building, and this is very vague because I don't know a whole lot about your site. I don't know about a bunch of other stuff. But if you're just looking at building a brand new building with typical church finishes, you're probably going to land somewhere with design, with everything, with chairs, with AV. You're going to land somewhere between $200 and $250 a square foot.
Okay.
So that's a pretty broad range, but there's a lot of unknowns there. Depending on what the unknowns are, you might be on the lower end of that. Depending, if there is crazy stuff, you might be on the higher end of that. But that's a pretty good range, and that should include all your design costs and everything else.
Total project.
Yeah. Total.
Elena, I think it might be cool to, if no one has a question, maybe someone could let us know how they're doing. I know Sheila's on the call, and there's several others I probably know, but if anyone wants to kind of pipe in and just let us know how they're doing.
We'd love that, guys.
Sure.
Love to hear from you.
And Lisa popped on and said thank you, and that this was helpful to her as well. So thank you, Lisa. We're so glad to hear that. Really, truly, we are. Thank you.
Sheila's jumping in. Go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks so much. The information has been wonderful. I'll share a little bit and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up if you don't mind, because we're a couple minutes over on time. And so I want to make sure we stay on task and I give folks the code that they need at the end. I think our next session is in about 10 minutes. We'll be at 10:30 Central Time. But I think for us, we've I don't know if you can hear the siren outside my office. Sorry.
Okay.
We've been weathering the storm for sure. I think with COVID, it just it exposed and also gave a whole lot of opportunity for churches to do things in a different way. And so certainly, as you guys are talking about growing different spaces and repurposing, I think that's in general what all churches have probably had to do during this time. We were in the process a few years ago of seeking spaces and looking for potentially growing and moving and what have you. And things just didn't quite come together. That's what Churches by Daniels, I believe, came out and had some conversation with us and talks with us. I think the biggest thing for us is we just didn't rush the process. I think that's really the main thing, is just trying to be led by the Holy Spirit, and really not, it's not about our own agenda, but really just seeking the Lord and saying, okay, this is the way we believe that we're supposed to be going. And so you do all of your due diligence, you take your steps that you need to take. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, not being tied to that, not being, disappointed by that, but really just listening to the experts. Certainly everyone that we worked with at Churches by Daniels and others gave us great advice and conversation and also direction.
We appreciate it.
Back on you guys' end.
tell the team there we said hello.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We missed
Absolutely.
you in person, Sheila. We're sad to miss you in the fellowship this year for sure.
I'm sorry. I didn't. Some feedback. I didn't get to hear. Sorry.
Oh, I just said we're sad we're not in person, but you know it's good to see you all from afar, and we're sad to miss out on the fellowship this year. But this has been awesome.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Well, thank you guys. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful. Wonderful information. I don't know. I don't see that there's any other questions, but I don't want to belabor the time, but really appreciate all that you guys brought to the table and all the information. I know that there's some fast breakout sessions later. I think you guys are going to be participating in one of those.
We
So
are.
wonderful.
So if anybody wants to bring questions, we're actually going to be on tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be on there and able to answer your questions. We'll be on there for that full hour, so the 1 o'clock and the 1:30 if you want to come by and chat with us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let me give the closing code, and we'll dismiss if that's okay with you guys. Closing code that I have is 573 B as in boy. 573 B as in boy, and the codes are for those that are looking for continuing education credits, CPE credits, so forth, if you're going for certification. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate everything, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Sheila.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.